John Wick Chapter 3 in 40X. Let's go. First movie in 40X here in the United States because I saw 40X movies in Mexico, but I'm very excited to see John Wick Chapter 3 in 40X, so let's go in.
I was talking tomorrow, I was like, come out of Aquaman, you seen that movie? What is it? Tell me what this real quick.
Let's get one.
Alright guys, so I did go see John Wick Chapter 3 in the new 40X theater that just opened here in Vegas for the premiere of Avengers Endgame. I have seen two 40X movies prior to John Wick. Those were in Mexico. You know, this is the first one here in Las Vegas, so I had to go check it out. The other movies that I saw in 40X was back in 2011 when this 40X technology was brand new for Transformers Dark of the Moon, and that was just an insane experience. One of my favorite theater experience up to this day. And then in 2017, I did, you know, when I was in Mexico, I did see Coco in 40X. And nothing really special for the 40X presentation in that movie. But the 40X theater, again, just opened here in Vegas. And of course, if there was one movie that I wanted to go check out in this theater that was not Endgame, it would be John Wick Chapter 3. So anyways, I'll talk about the 40X experience after I'm done talking about the actual movie itself, like everything that the 40X has to offer with this specific movie. So I'm going to talk about the 40X experience overall after I'm done with this review. But anyways, in John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, basically everything that was set up in the last 3 minutes of John Wick Chapter 2 is basically all laid out in this movie. And then we get our story for this movie. Now, I absolutely loved the first John Wick movie for many reasons, and I thought that John Wick Chapter 2 was a good sequel, but nothing in my opinion that made that movie better than the first movie. Now with Chapter 3, I was really expecting something better than the first movie, but honestly for me, I just kind of felt the same way, almost the same way, about this movie as I did watching the second movie. And, you know, John Wick Chapter 3 overall is a very good follow-up to the first two movies, but I honestly feel like this franchise is just getting kind of old, and it's just kind of getting tiring and very fictional for its own good, up to the degree where it just sort of becomes more like that cheesy 90s action movie where the characters are just being thrown all over the place in action scenes. And, you know, of course, Keanu Reeves is great as John Wick, you know, as he's always been in these movies. Keanu Reeves is really in this point in his career where he's actually becoming one of the best action stars of our generation thanks to these John Wick movies. And I love this dude so much that it's just great to see him back as this character in this movie. And Halle Berry is in this movie for a few minutes. She didn't really have a huge role in this movie as I thought that she would. And with that being said, I didn't really think that there was a huge purpose to her character in this movie either, considering the amount of screen time that she had. Again, very limited screen time, very minor role. There wasn't a lot of purpose to why her character was here. I mean, she was really only here for one scene, and I kind of see why. But, you know, it's just nothing that really stood out that much. But I would have liked to see more of her character. But she was good for the scenes that she was in. I'm hoping that she returns for Chapter 4, which just got announced, by the ways. So I'm hoping that she returns in a future installment. And in all honesty, I think I had more fun with her dogs in this movie than anything else, because that action scene with the dogs is so over the top, but at the same time it's just so good. There's a good amount of creativeness to that scene, and it just played out as a very, very exciting action scene, and I just love that scene so much. That scene and a scene in the beginning that involves John Wick and horses. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I think that the story is really solid for the most part, but like, you know, for the most part it's really solid, but I just really can't stand but to think that the movie's plot is the same thing that happens in the last 20 minutes of John Wick Chapter 2, and overall the movie as a whole feels very repetitive, and it really starts to get really tiring after a while. Like, I was never bored watching this movie at all, but the last few minutes of this thing just repeats itself, and it just sort of feels like there's nothing that we already haven't seen in the first two acts of the movie. Like there's this one scene where Keanu Reeves was, and it wasn't this scene was in the last act of the movie. A scene where Keanu Reeves is being thrown in like 6 different walls, all at once, or not at once. I mean, one by one. My bad. And like the first 2 times that happened, there was some type of tension, but after he kept on being thrown into the other walls, it just felt like the tension was all gone because everything that was building up to it, like it already took too long, and all the tension was gone by then. And that's my biggest problem with the third act of this movie, is that the tension really, it's everything that was leading up from the first 2 acts of this movie, everything that was leading up to the third act of this movie is kind of gone by the time we approach the third act of this movie. And this movie is also very slow paced. Again, it's never boring, but like there's just scenes in this movie that just kind of move on too long. And I really cared for John Wick a lot in this movie, but I just didn't feel the same way about his character as I did during the first movie. I mean, think about it. Like in the first movie, you understand why he was pissed because his wife just passed away, and then the dog that his wife gifted him after her death was killed by some dudes, and there was more tension, more motivation to his character. And dare I even say, there was an extra layer to his character in that first movie because of that. And it's something that I really haven't seen ever since the first John Wick movie. But overall, the narrative just sort of works when it isn't repeating itself. And of course, the action scenes were all really well made, and they were all fantastic. And, I did run into some problems, especially with the third act of this movie, but that shouldn't stop you guys from seeing this movie in theaters. I know I do want to give this movie slightly a higher score, but as of now, my first time watching this is my initial reaction, and basically I feel I would recommend this movie, but I would recommend it on a matinee. So with that being said, I'm going to give John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum a B. As far as the 4DX experience goes, it was a cool experience, but there's 2 things you gotta ask yourself before going into one of these theaters. First of all, what's the asking price for a 4DX ticket? And then second of all, is this specific movie even gonna be worth it in 4DX? For everything that 4DX is offering, do you think that you're gonna get your money's worth? And for the most part, it was a cool experience, but look at the price of this ticket. That's a matinee, $18.90. The regular price ticket is $20.90, only $2 more, but still, basically you're gonna be paying around $20 for a 4DX theater, and for this movie, like, okay, so there are a lot of scenes where a lot of action scenes, of course, where the seats move and it's in sync to the movie and everything. And there's scenes where characters are being poked in the back, they're being thrown into the ground, and there's this really cool effect in your seat where it just kind of pokes your back. And one of my favorite effects from this 4DX experience is a scene where they're throwing like smoke bombs in this place, and then like all this smoke starts like arising from underneath the screen, going all around the theater. I thought that was a pretty cool effect. And another effect that is used throughout this movie is that they have these 2 air holes like right next to your ears, and basically anytime they're like shooting bullets, it's supposed to like stimulate like bullets flying like right next to you. So that was a cool effect. And there are some water effects in this movie, but the seats that I chose, the water effects were not working, unfortunately, so I didn't have any access to the water effects in this movie. But from what I saw from other seats in the theater, it looked like they were using a fair amount of water during this movie. Yeah, it was a cool experience. But again, would I recommend paying $20 to see this movie in 4DX when you could see it in Dolby for about the same price, maybe even less? Not really. It's a cool experience, but nothing worth shelling out $20 for. For the most part, it seems like this 40X gimmick works more for big franchise movies. More for movies like Avengers Endgame, the new Godzilla movie, the new X-Men Dark Phoenix movie coming out in a few weeks, which I think is going to be the next movie I watch in 40X. So, again, you really have to choose these movies carefully when you're going to go watch a movie in 40X. So, John Wick Chapter 3, not exactly the ideal 40X experience, but it was a cool one. But again, you got to consider the price, and especially if you're on a budget, just see this movie in something like in Dolby, which I'm sure would probably be a better experience. But yeah, the moving seats were not distracting or anything. So yeah, that was cool. But again, $20, I don't really recommend it for that price point. But anyways, yeah, that's what I thought about the 40X experience, and that's what I thought about John Wick Chapter 3. So anyways, have you guys seen this movie? Have you guys seen it? What did you guys think about it? Tell me in the comment section down below. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.